He comes in on a stretcher, 70 years old, history of medical problems, alcoholic, and he is out cold. The doctors begin to work on him, and they find that on his chest is a tattoo that says, "Do not resuscitate," and is signed by the man inside the skin. I'm Scott Ott with Bill Whittle and Stephen Green. This episode of Right Angle brought to you by the members at BillWhittle.com. Man, this was a fascinating situation that happened in Florida, where a guy comes in without any friends or relatives, and he has apparently explicit instructions to medical professionals that he is not to be resuscitated if his life is in jeopardy. However, the doctors, acting on the basic principle that in the face of an uncertainty, they don't want to do anything that's irreversible, they actually work on him and keep him alive for a while, until eventually the hospital social worker discovers that he had a written DNR order, a do not resuscitate order, at which point he was allowed to die. But it raises some fascinating questions about whose life is it anyway. Bill, in our backstage episode, we talked about this woman I knew years ago who died of a heart attack while square dancing in her 90s. She was a nonagenarian, and they resuscitated her several times in the life flight helicopter as they rushed her to the hospital. Her life sort of, instead of going out with a bang while square dancing, trickled away over the coming months, and she passed away in a nursing home. Whose life is it anyway, Bill? I mean, if you can't, a DNR request on paper is only as good as the people who see the paper. You put it right on your chest, and they still resuscitate you.
Well, first of all, I would rather live in a world where everybody's in a hurry to keep me alive than in a hurry to save money by letting me go. So that's the first thing I'd like to say. If we're going to err on the side of, if we're going to err, we should err on the side of the the stuff that's not irreparably fatal or damaging. Needless to say, I think this is the world that we've made for ourselves. Somewhere 30 years ago or so, the McDonald's hot coffee lawsuit seems to be a marker for me that I remember going, what? But we've basically built this world for ourselves where having something bad happen to you as a result of somebody else is kind of like it's like a lottery ticket. It's like winning a big hunk of money in this country for many people. Something bad happens to you, or even somebody who's related to you. A lot of people look at this as like a big cash opportunity. I'm not trying to say that they don't feel grief about it. But, Cessna was liable for 25 years. Somebody flew a Cessna airplane upside down, drunk into a mountain during a thunderstorm. People would sue Cessna, and Cessna would pay.
It should be able to withstand all that, huh?
You would think. And so, parenthetically, Cessna said if we could limit this liability to something like 8 years or something, we'll start making small airplanes again. And they did, and so they did. No. But this kind of thing is ridiculous. And so in the face of that, I can understand why a hospital would say, hey, until we know for sure, let's err on the side of caution, and same for the paramedics who don't want to lose their job and so on. As I mentioned in the backstage show, if I were to go drinking with Steve Green one night and wake up with a big "do not resuscitate" and on my chest with my signature below it, and it turns out that was a mistake, I would have them ink out the "not," and it would say "do resuscitate" with big underlines under the "do." By the way, if I ever do find myself in a coma and I can't come out of it, guys, I'd like you to go into the hospital room and turn off all the life support system, and then turn it back on again to see if that fixes it, because usually works pretty well with the computer.
Right, yeah. If you reboot it.
So I guess I would like to live in both worlds, Scotty. I'd like to live in a world where wishes that are that plainly made are honored, because there is no lawfare culture, and there is no sense that a catastrophe, some sort of medical catastrophe, is a financial jackpot. We built that world for ourselves by basically having companies agree to, it's cheaper just to pay. So it's cheaper just to pay, then people do it, gratuitously. But at the same time, I am very happy to live in a society where enormous amounts of resources are dedicated to trying to preserve every single individual life, no matter what the cost or what kind of shape they're in. if it had turned out that they were overriding his written DNR, that'd be a whole different story.
Well, they were actually, because he had a written DNR. The problem was when you come into an ER, they don't immediately have your do not resuscitate paperwork in their hands.
So again, what are they going to assume? I'd rather live in a world where they're going to assume that I don't have a DNR and organ donor thing on file until they find it on file. I like for them to not assume that, oh, he's probably an organ donor. Just look at the guy. You know, it's. I think the hospital certainly did the safe thing, and in a gray world like that, as I said, I think they probably did the right thing, much as it pains me to say.
You know, Stephen Green, this may conjure for some people. I mean, I would posit that the average American would say, do whatever it takes to save anybody's life all the time. Okay, so, you know, that's like, I think most people who are watching this are probably going to say, well, screw the guy's DNR. You know, you got to save a life. You can't just let him go. On the other hand, there is a certain sense of loss of individual autonomy and therefore dignity anytime you enter into the medical professional's realm. And especially if it's in a very serious kind of condition where you go in there and all of a sudden people are doing things to you. They think they're doing things for you, but you have this sudden sense of, I am a captive. I can remember my grandfather after knee surgery threatening the nurses that he was going to crawl out of the rehab facility on his hands and, you know, injured knee if necessary, just to get away from their loving ministrations. Where's the balance in all this?
Wow. Yeah. Well, first, I'd just like to say, Bill, if we ever go out drinking, I promise you will not wake up with a DNR tattoo on you. I'm far more interested in the major working portion of your liver. We'll talk about that another day.
In a bathtub of ice, my friend.
I wouldn't know anything about that.
My gallbladder that's burned out.
Oh,
that's right.
yours and my both.
His spleen has also been vented.
That's my spleen. That's what I meant to say. Spleen. Sorry.
Yeah. I feel for the hospital on this one. There is, or maybe there used to be, I don't know now, a website devoted to regrettable tattoos. I think it was called regrettabletattoos.com. And I hope they're still around because, boy, you just get to see it. It's kind of a more artistic version, if you will, of People of Walmart. And I kind of love those sites. I love the crazy mashup of humanity and everybody kind of doing their own thing. It's so America. So, you know, the guy comes into the hospital, he's unconscious. Does this tattoo mean what it says, or was it a drunken mistake? Was it a regrettable tattoo? So the hospital didn't know. What I would like to see is, you know, tattoo parlors, reputable ones, have certain codes of conduct that they respect. And one of them is you don't tattoo somebody who is obviously drunk, or even if you think they might be drunk, because you don't want them waking up in the morning with you know, some huge facial tattoo. That's another one. Reputable tattoo parlors will not do face tattoos until they have interviewed you and they know for sure that this is a serious lifestyle-altering tattoo that you are going to embark upon. And do you really want to do this? Because it will affect your love life, your career, and everything if you do the wrong thing. I would like to see reputable tattoo parlors band together and say, we are not going to put a DNR tattoo on somebody that we have not seen the written DNR for. And then hospitals, emergency rooms, can take comfort in the knowledge that they are almost certainly doing the right thing. Because I got to tell you, you know, we've heard these stories about the guy, not a tattoo, but he had to get a leg amputated, and he'd heard the stories about the hospital that had accidentally amputated the wrong leg. So he took a Sharpie and wrote, "Amputate this leg. Do not amputate this leg."
That's wise.
In black Sharpie, and you know, you write back here, remove this kidney. Not this kid, whatever the case is going to be, because mistakes happen. And I don't want to tattoo myself, but I respect the heck out of this guy for doing what he thought was the right thing. I'm sorry, as Bill said, that we have this lawsuit culture that made the hospital go into CYA mode. But most importantly, I'd like to see the tattoo parlors get together and do the right thing, because I think this is really this could be an actual beneficial thing for those willing to take this step.
Yes, and for any person who owns a tattoo parlor that wishes to do this ethical thing and see the loss of 75% of your business, please send an email to Stephen Green. Yeah,
That's not true. Tattoo parlors have a horrible reputation, but they do not deserve it. It's not just
No.
drunk
I'm
Navy
not saying
guys
it's the
on shore
tattoo
leave.
parlors. I'm saying it's their customers. I think it
Oh.
takes a certain amount of lubrication to get up the courage to go in and have that done, or at least from what I've heard. This is interesting. I'm going to even give this hospital. I'm going to attribute different motives to this hospital than maybe Bill or Steve have implied, and that is, I think that the medical teams are really serious about their mission of saving lives. Certainly, there's that CYA liability thing in the back of your mind, but I think primarily medical professionals are driven by a compassionate desire to see people's lives improved or saved, and it must be the most difficult thing in the world to step away from a table when you know that you can do something. But the challenge becomes, what is life? And having seen my friend Thelma years ago now, who I just thought, man, what is a better way? The woman loved Jesus, and she dropped dead on the floor while square dancing, and she's in her 90s. And I'm thinking, that's the way I want to go. I want to be old, I want to be dancing, and I want to go and be with Jesus. And they kind of well-meaning people called the authorities, picked her up in a helicopter, flew her down to the city, revived her along the way. Every step of the way, people who cared about life and healing helped her along until when I finally got to see her, she's in the hospital strapped to a board, non-communicative, and I went to see her several times afterward in the nursing home where her life, like I said, just kind of trickled away. And instead of dying on her feet as the vibrant woman that I knew her to be, she died on her back, surrounded by strangers. And maybe I allow my memory of this to cloud my judgment in this situation. But I think I'm not one of those guys who says, hey, yank the plug on everybody, or that is trying to. I certainly am against assisted suicide and things like that. But I think that there is a certain dignity in death that can be lost in the process of trying to restore life, if that makes any sense. For Bill Whittle and Stephen Green, I'm Scott Ott. Thanks to the members at BillWhittle.com for making this show possible.